Hey, Retro community. Today's video is going to start off a series that's going to cover clone consoles. Not all of them, but whatever I can get my hands on. So for today's video, I'm going to go over the RetroN HD by Hyperkin, since I already have one of those. Now I should note that this is not a sponsored video. I purchased this console myself with my own money, as seen in my October 2019 pickups video. Now some of you may already be familiar with such products, but I thought I'd talk about it for those who aren't. Now, clone consoles have existed for a long time, even dating back to the original NES Famicom. Chips were sourced or reverse engineered to develop these clones, which were mainly sold in areas where the NES was not available, such as the Soviet Union, China, and South America. But over time, these reverse engineered chips were able to be combined into a single chip, sometimes referred to an NES on a chip. Most modern clones utilize this chip, though some will instead use emulation. The RetroN HD uses the former. Now, Hyperkin has been in the retro business since about 2011 and makes accessories for retro consoles as well as clone consoles themselves. They also have a small selection of accessories for modern consoles as well, including the Xbox One, but today we're talking about the RetroN HD. This is an upgraded version of their previous RetroN 1, which only had composite output. Basically, the HD part of this is that they added an HDMI output capable of a resolution of 720p. Might sound impressive, but we'll get to that later. First, we'll go over the console itself, then its capabilities, and finally a demo and comparison, at least as close as possible to an original NES. The RetroN HD comes with the console itself, one controller which mimics the original NES's design, though with a good minor change, an HDMI cable, standard AV cables, a micro USB cable and wall wart for power, and a quick start guide. The console itself sports the following ports, connections, and switches/buttons. 2 controller ports on the front, a cartridge slot on top, micro USB port for power, an HDMI out port, stereo AV out, although like the original console, it only outputs mono, so it just splits in between left and right. There's also a switch to change between 16:9 and 4:3 aspect ratios. And on the bottom, there's a region selection switch to change between NTSC and PAL, which means that you'll be able to play games from Europe or North America. And of course, there's a power button and a reset button. There's not much else to the console. It comes in 3 color schemes: black with red accents, white with red accents, and gray with black accents. A matching controller is provided. You can also use stock NES controllers, including the Dogbone variant, and most third-party controllers that were available for the NES during the time. The controller itself is modeled after the original box-shaped NES controller we got in North America and in Europe. However, it has Hyperkin's signature beveled edges, which in this case make the design much easier to hold versus the originals, as the corners aren't digging into your palms after extended play. As stated, the console is just an HDMI-fitted revision of the RetroN 1. It feeds the video output from the NES on a chip to an HDMI converter/upscaler. However, it's not exactly the best picture quality. Either it doesn't feed into the RGB output, if these chips even have that, or it does a really poor job of it. Granted, the HDMI output is much cleaner than the AV output, and especially the RF output of the original NES. But it's not going to be as clean of an output as an FPGA-based console, or even the NES Classic. Now, I did manage to capture some footage, both using my HDMI capture device that I debuted last week, as well as just doing direct recording with my camera. I wanted to try to get the HDMI output as clean as possible using the capture device. However, this also adds a little bit of lag. Fortunately for this case, it doesn't matter because I just want to show the visuals. And then showing it what it would look like on an average television, what the composite output on the console looks like on an average television, and then compare those to the composite output of an original NES. Here's some of the footage along with some text overlay explaining which one is which. I should also note that while I didn't get a chance to capture any of it, the audio just doesn't sound right, no matter whether I'm using HDMI or composite output on the RetroN HD. It sounds a little tinny and just off in general. I wish I was able to capture it so I could try to show you what I mean. If I can find some footage out on YouTube, I'll try to include that in here, or at least a link so you can try to get an idea. But it just doesn't sound the way I remember it. I can tell that there's something off about it, but that's typical of these NES on a chip clones. Sometimes you could add some extra circuitry to get around some of these issues, but it doesn't look like they did that in this case. So that begs the question, should you get one? It's basically geared towards people who A, don't have a working original NES to play on, B, don't like how the video output of the original NES looks like on modern TVs and don't have a CRT to play on, or C, don't want to invest in an expensive FPGA-based clone or modding their original console and getting some specialty cables. With that said, if you're serious about having the best experience possible, you may want to consider one of those alternatives. FPGA-based clones will have the best possible video output and have similar compatibility to this RetroN HD and other clone consoles. Even modding an original NES and using specialized cables is also a good option. Again, they're not cheap, but if you're serious about your visuals, this is going to be the way to go. Now, if you just want to pick up a game every now and then this console is probably going to be good enough for you. You can get it usually for $25 to $40, depending on where you get it from and whether it's on sale. So it's definitely one of those cheap pickups. An FPGA-based clone console can run you $200, $300, $400, $500 sometimes, and modding an original console isn't going to be too much cheaper. An HDMI output board itself is like around $150 and requires you to have soldering capabilities. If you don't, you're going to have to find someone to do it for you, so that's extra money there. And if you decide to go the RGB modding route, then you'll need a device that's capable of accepting an RGB signal, converting that to HDMI, or outputting that to a device that has RGB inputs. So yeah, basically for those who are really serious about collecting. What other option is good enough for you, depending on what your preferences are? Don't let anyone tell you that you need to spend hundreds of dollars to get the best experience, but at the same time, don't let anyone dissuade you from doing that either. If you've got the money to do it and you want the best possible option, go FPGA or modding. You just want to pick up a game now and then, or you want to try to save some money, go this route. Who knows, maybe you start off with this, and they get you into retro collecting, and then you decide to get an original NES and mod it, or perhaps even go with an FPGA clone. Who knows? I should also mention that there is a little bit of lag when you're playing with the RetroN HD. To me, it's imperceivable. If I hit a button, it seems like Mario's jumping, but other people may be more sensitive to it. Also possible that because I'm so used to playing on emulators and maybe I'm just attuned to the lag, I'm not sure, but it should be noted. I will be discussing other clone consoles in the future as soon as I get my hands on a few. If you liked the video, please tap or click on the thumbs up, and feel free to subscribe if you haven't yet. However, if you didn't like the video, go ahead and hit the thumbs down, but please leave a comment below as to why, so I can use that to help make improvements in the future. Thanks all, and I'll catch you later.